This sitting is resumed. Prior to the suspension for lunch, the Honourable Chamber was debating the appropriation bill in Standing Finance Committee. We continue to debate the appropriation bill.
Standing Finance Committee is resumed. Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to Senior Minister and to his team. I trust that everyone is well. Senior Minister, my question relates to really about consumers, but the first part is about the Fair Trading Commission. We know that the Fair Trading Commission is to regulate utilities in Barbados and to help ensure in a way that services are delivered fairly and hopefully that prices remain reasonable to Barbadians. And just reading on it, it sounds like the Fair Trading Commission should be seen as a friend to the people. Yet, when you follow the public discourse, one sometimes cannot tell if the public views it as friend or foe. But as I read through the estimates, if you go to 463, subprogram 468, the allocation for the commission this year is $5.6 million. So my question is, and this is really a question that relates to the consumers, how will this allocation strengthen the regulatory oversight of utilities, particularly in relation to electricity, as I have some follow-up questions, and the ongoing energy transition?
Honourable Member, I'm going to allow Mr. Brian Rees, who is CEO of the FTC, to speak to the question. But let me just share with you a little bit that, again, the history helps to give the answer. The Fair Trade Commission, since it had been created, was really supposed to be that intermediary, intermediary force within the Barbados economy that enables us to modernize in a few fundamental ways. One, that you are looking after the protection of consumers, as you indicate. Secondly, that you are regulating in the interest of businesses being fair in the marketplace. So you're avoiding one company having a very dominant position in the market over everybody else. Regulating the way in which mergers and acquisitions take place so that one massive enterprise does not just swallow up everything without reference to the implications it can have for the market. And of course, there is the Office of, what's it called? Consumer Protection? Public Counsel, where the average man in your constituency or mine, who, for example, may go in at a store that I will not name right now, and get or feels that he got unfair in the exercise of purchasing something on a higher purchase basis, or the quality of the fridge that he carry home or the dinette set or whatever is not satisfactory, that he then has some sort of a recourse to a body that will treat to his concern in a very direct and targeted way. So those are some of the things that the Fair Trade Commission should be doing, and that is really what the money budgeted for in the estimates is about. Now, I confess, I have not carefully scrutinized to see the extent to which there's been a variation from before, but and that may be because I've only been doing this now for 3 weeks. but it is a reality that we have to make sure we finance those things. Now, with regard to the energy sector, it is even more important because the energy sector really is that driver of the Barbados economy for the future, at present and for the future. And as we roll out new technologies, there have got to be what we call tariffs in order for investors to get a return on their investment. So that, for example, with regard to solar photovoltaics, when we first recommenced business after COVID, one of the first things that I had to do, and I believe former Minister Sutherland, the Honourable Member for St. George South, would have had to do this just before COVID, was to make sure that we had a tariff that was fit for purpose in the PV sector. And I remember well that we came to Parliament with an accelerated premium for those people who were investing in solar photovoltaics up to a certain level, so as to unlock capital that otherwise would not have been put into the PV sector. And then after that, everybody wanted to get to heaven without dying because they thought they could get money real fast, which is part of the problem that we must now correct today because there's been an over-demand in that sector. But I say all of that simply to say that one of the things that the Fair Trade Commission does is to really set the rates that people will have to pay, and therefore it impacts the returns on the investment of the proposed investor. It is dry, difficult, dull work on the part of the FTC, very, very, very technical, and I guess that is perhaps why people don't really track it, but it is indispensable to the way in which Barbados' economy operates. And as I said, we have Mr. Brian Rees here, who is the CEO, and I feel that he perhaps might be able to share a deeper and better insight than I can.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon to the honourable members. And I thank the Senior Minister for the opportunity he's given to the FTC to share with you, honourable member, through me. Chair, the FTC's budget has been specifically crafted for exactly as the Minister has alluded, to provide not only a connection with our public, but also to be able to meet the demands and the expectations of that public as we develop, not only within the electricity sector, but with all of the sectors that we have a responsibility for. As I'm sure most people are aware within this chamber, and I would wish that we share it with as many persons in Barbados as possible, we cover not only the utility regulation of the sector, but also we cover fair competition, and we also cover, as you alluded to, consumer protection. As far as the budget is concerned, we are specifically, and I'm dealing with the general first, we are specifically looking at greater stakeholder engagement, which includes us getting boots on the ground, engaging with the public, so that we're not seen to be that ivory tower far away where people can't necessarily participate intimately. We want people to know that we are there. The Minister has very eloquently expressed the balance that we have to discharge, which is not only to the consumers, but also to the business sector as well. We need to make sure that there is a ROI, as far as that return on investment. But as far as the consumers are concerned, we have to make sure that we are on the ground, that we are engaging with them, we understand what the issues are, and we're presenting what are credible, useful, and practical solutions to their issues. One such example I would share with you is as far as the telecom sector is concerned. And I know that in the telecom sector, we've had a number of concerns raised about the mobile and broadband services that exist, and whether the service providers' operations are at the standard that one would expect in this age. And we appreciate that there are improvements that must be made. Sadly, we do not have at this present time the regulatory mandate, the statutory mandate to be able to discharge that duty. But nonetheless, in 2023, we actually created a voluntary mobile telecommunications standard for the two operators within our jurisdiction.
Officer, I hate to interrupt you, moving very smoothly, but I do not recall you saying who you are and your position.
My sincerest apologies, Chair. I am Brian Rees. I'm the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of the Fair Trading Commission.
Thank you.
My sincerest apologies. As I was saying, Honourable Member, the telecoms voluntary code that was created in 2023, as the name suggests, requires that the service providers first agree to certain standards voluntarily and then comply with those standards over time voluntarily. We've actually seen since 2023 a reduction in the quantum of refunds that we have had to seek for consumers because of the fact that those matters are now handled by that voluntary code. We've actually reduced from 104,000 approximately Barbados dollars, to in the region of around 15,000 Barbados dollars, simply because we've created a standardized approach to the management of the interaction between the consumers and the service providers. But we want to go further, and we're presently engaged with our stakeholders in government who have the responsibility for the amendments that are required to the legislation, to seek to have the legislation adjusted so that we can broaden our mandate, so that we can provide greater opportunity for the establishment of standards to ensure quality. You mentioned specifically the electricity sector, and I purposely waited till last. A lot of what we have put our budget towards is training, ensuring that the FTC staff are able to meet the demands of novel technology, a very dynamic environment, and the move from what was previously a very linear engagement between the public utility and the FTC into what is now a multidimensional approach as far as the independent power producers are concerned. We're going to have a multitude of persons coming onto the grid very shortly, and we need to be able to see them face to face, deliver the services that are expected of us under our statutory mandate, and do that in as timely a manner as possible. And the only way to do that is to build the confidence through the training, through the experience. And the budget is geared towards not only instantaneous training, but developing the FTC as an agency that is at the cutting edge, at the tip of the spear of all matters related to energy. Additionally, we're also looking this year in the financial year 2026-2027 to have an organizational review done. One was started, I believe maybe a year or two ago, and it was not completed because of some extraneous matters. But we do see the need to complete the organizational review to be able to say that we not only have, but have a plan for developing the manpower for the FTC. We need to be able to assess what are the manpower hours, the approximate hours that are required to complete tasks, to ensure that we have sufficient and properly trained manpower to deliver those services that we see necessary. I could go on if you wish me to, but if I have answered your question, I remain here to any further questions.
No need to go on. You were extremely thorough, and I appreciate the response. It's very informative. My second question, I guess it's tied to the first, and my follow-up question really is emerged from your conversation, Minister, on the Office of Public Counsel. In the estimates, they have 1.2 million, and similar to the FTC, I think the words that Mr. Reese used was seen as ivory towers. When I know that their primary purpose, my mind always goes to what's in the deal for people. How does this help people? And so for me, how do we, or what is the role, I should say, of the Office of Public Counsel? I know I've seen in terms of mediation, regulatory proceedings, and so on and so forth, but with a little bit more specificity for the public, so that these things do not seem to be things outside the reach of the ordinary citizen. What is the role and what is the $1.2 million allocated in these year's estimates for, similar to what FTC has been able to explain? My view also is that a lot of what you said should be known to the public. I just think we are not doing enough public engagement. And we are allowing the very good work of a lot of these organizations to be lost in untamed social media conversations. And so I would like to hear through you, Minister, about the Office of Public Counsel and to what extent that agency has really been able to help ordinary people.
Honorable member, you know that that is a new question. Say that again.
My question, Chair, was in relation to regulatory agencies and the impact they're having on consumers. And that the minister, in his response, referred to the Office of Public Counsel as part of that programming. It is very much a follow-up question, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister. And I can only tell you that I share your view. And having come back to the ministry, I feel a certain sense of purpose to rededicate myself on this issue. And for me, it is an unfinished part of the original business when I had first an opportunity. And I will tell you, there are a few departments of this ministry, one which is no longer with us, but I signaled already, and I will signal again, that I feel strongly it perhaps needs to be with us, and that is the BNSI. There are certain indispensable parts of the apparatus of this ministry, which I think the public needs to be conversant about. The public needs to be as aware of as they are aware of anything else that happens in Barbados, because they really represent tangible mechanisms which the average Barbadian can use in order to make the quality of life better financially in this country. So that the BNSI, which is the National Standards Institute, for example, should be part of the discussion of any business person in Barbados, because of the fact that its business really is about helping people to do what they do to the highest possible standard. Believe you me, in 2022, when I became the minister, or was it 2021, there were 9,000 identified businesses under this sector in Barbados, and 43 had a relationship with the BNSI. And that alarmed me. On Sunday, I'm going to invite Sandra Rollins, who is public counsel, to share her thoughts on this with you. But on Sunday, as I talked to some of the officers from the public counsel's office, I said the same thing, that, you know, the work that they're doing is indispensable, but we hide in the light under the bushel. And unless people know, then, and perhaps it is that they know but have forgotten and have not, it has not been constantly re-emphasized. I remember when the Fair Trade Commission was first created, the idea of an Office of Public Counsel and what it could do to help people who want to fight up with whatever private sector entity it is, especially the ones that were at that time doing a lot of hire purchase type business. That was something that I think gained good common currency in Barbados. Many years after, I don't sense that anybody talks about it, but we have to find a way to keep it top of mind, and I think this is one of the challenges that PS, myself, and my deputy are going to have to work through, because it may be that we need to use GIS better. There may be many ways in which we approach this, but the fact of the matter is that you're 100% right. I cannot disagree with you in any way. These are institutions that are critical. They empower the Barbadian consumer, they empower the Barbadian business, and ensure fairness in the marketplace, and those are the things that we have to help to deliver. If Ms. Rollins is in a position now to be able to speak, I would yield the floor to her.
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Sandra Rollins. I am the public counsel in the Office of Public Counsel. The role of the Office of Public Counsel, it is multifaceted. Mainly it is to educate the consumers of Barbados about their rights, and also form of redress under the Consumer Guarantees Act, Cap 326E of the laws of Barbados. We are also there to guide suppliers of both goods and services. The whole idea is that we want consumers to be confident in the marketplace, that when they purchase goods, be it a washing machine, a cell phone, that they can feel comfortable that they are getting a product of acceptable quality, fit for purpose, and that if they are getting any service done, be it getting a house painted, house renovated, that the supplier of the services would provide the service of good standard. Now, it is true that many persons know of the FTC more than they know of the Office of the Public Counsel. And during I have been there from April last year to now, and we have been doing a series of outreach programs. We took part in two or three of the regathering exercises. Two actually. One in St. John and the other three. One in St. John, one in St. George, and the other that was by the Central Bank. We also do outreach with the Registrar of Cooperatives. In those situations, we are meeting both consumers and we are also meeting suppliers. It is important that we engage both of them. This year, we have a essay competition and a poster competition running in the secondary schools. And shortly during this month, we will have a suppliers forum. So we recognize that the Office of Public Counsel has to get out there and let people, both the consumers and the suppliers, know that we are there for them. What we have found recently, as I was mentioned to someone, that we are getting an increasing number, though small, an increasing number of suppliers calling the Office of Public Counsel to get guidance on how they should treat to a complaint from a consumer.
My final follow-up, and
Before you go there, if I could just make an interjection, Mr. Chairman, because I think that there's a policy issue that is very important here. Senior Minister, I feel that in your sector, well, a service that is done or provided has to be provided in a timely manner. And you will find as you go through the infrastructure experience that there are many contractors who are accused of not performing in a timely manner. That is one of the concerns really that the Consumers Guarantee Act speaks to. I recall well that issues of prior use of a product, that people buy something anticipating that it is brand new or a certain type of condition, and then lo and behold, that is not the case. The question of repairs and availability of spare parts, that is a burning issue in Barbados. And it is, to my way of thinking, highly unfortunate, first of all, that these things continue to happen all through the years without the appropriate intervention and satisfactory resolution. But it happens because our people may not be as aware as perhaps we think they are or as they should be. And we got to help them be aware. So I own it as minister that this is one of the challenges that we're going to have to do. We're going to have, as Pierre says, to do the public relations. It may mean one day that we have to hire public relations people. We hate to think it has to come to that. But it really does mean that we have to have an educational program. Because as I just said these things, I could see the nod in your head as you recognize that these are matters that you yourself will collide with, your constituents can collide with, the whole of Barbados collides with, but we have not necessarily used the existing institution appropriately. So it isn't that it isn't there. The Office of Public Counsel is there and it is staffed and it is supposed to be doing this work, but it can't do that which is not brought to its attention. And we have to help it, therefore, do that.
My final follow-up, Chair, and again, so that you don't scold me unnecessarily, I will try to make the association obvious. But it is in relation to the points that were raised, I think, both by Senior Minister and Mr. Rees, in relation to this energy transition, and I think what we ought to see coming. Now, when I perused your estimates, Senior Minister, I saw explanatory notes referring to work with electric buses, vehicle-to-grid systems, different things. And so it tells me that there's going to be a conversation around the capacity at some point of the grid. And perhaps, as you mentioned, you hinted, the inevitable disappointment of Barbadians if they're not able to get what they think this great future promises. And so I want to know to what extent are these agencies, whether it is the FTC, whether it is the Office of Public Counsel, or whatever agency, is currently monitoring that transition to the extent that when Barbadians find themselves where perhaps the grid infrastructure is unable to grant them what they think they should get, or when if there are too many buses or too many electric vehicles, who's monitoring this? Because at some point, I suspect these are going to be the realities faced by the Fair Trading Commission. And I heard Mr. Rees speak of training, so I imagine that he's preparing his staff for some of these conversations. But I suspect the direction that the country is going to have to filter down to these agencies so that when these things come, inevitably as they will, the ministry is better able to respond. So I just want to know to what extent are we monitoring and what planning mechanisms are currently in place to be able to help address what I think is an inevitable reality, one way or the other.
And thank you for the question, Senior Minister. When I asked Delano Canterbury, who I believe is project director with renewables, to prepare himself to answer. But let me say to you that, again, this is where I think a certain element of perhaps reset, but definitely dialogue has to take place. I don't want to just use the word reset because I am not entirely sure the extent to which some of these things have been happening during under the last minister who was doing a number of different things in this sector. But I do believe that, for example, just to use your example, answering you directly, the FTC has a role to play, but it is by no stretch of the imagination the be-all and end-all of this question of how we monitor what the market is going to be able to bear and how much renewable energy can come on. That is really going to have to be done by the ministry itself as market monitor. And there is a specifically defined role for the Ministry of Energy as market monitor. Again, when I was minister previously, I had been engaging with the automotive sector in Barbados. And I was doing so, and you may recall, I had brought a couple of papers to Cabinet where we were updating colleagues on the fact that we obviously have a given amount of vehicles on the ground in Barbados. And as we think about how we roll out the new look of vehicle, which is hybrid, electric, etc., we have to make provision for the fact that there are going to be some, as recently as this morning, I have no doubt, people would have gone to buy a brand new car, and that brand new car is operating off of diesel or gas. But we will come to a point in time in the not too distant future when there will be no more diesel or gasoline vehicles being brought into Barbados. And therefore, we have then to think in terms not of a phase out, because that point of time, I don't want to be quoted as given any finite period, but it can't be that far away. So therefore, we know this because we have a commitment to be entirely fossil fuel free by 2035. We're in 2026 now. So let us assume that happened in 2034, that we said that. That vehicle is still a relatively young vehicle. So we have to be looking at these things and then thinking in terms of how we fuel that vehicle, because there ain't gonna be no more diesel. So the biofuel discussion has to take place. And those are some of the conversations that we have started to have. And I think I'm going to be bringing a redoubling of the energy, no pun intended, to those conversations, because I want to know that all importers of vehicle in Barbados, large or small, must be on board with what it is that we're trying to do, because I do not want to hear that at the last minute people are crying out saying, oh gosh, this is an interruption to my business, I was projecting whatever, and the government come and say something different. We need to be able to be all on the same page on this. So again, I take your point, Minister. There are many moving parts in this conversation, but it is a journey of national transformation, and it is going to require a lot of discussion and forbearance on both sides, because government has not always gotten it right and will not always get it right. But equally, we have to be given the private sector an opportunity to plan ahead and make the necessary adjustments, and have a proper window to do that. Delano Scantlebury, as I said, would probably be able to speak fairly extensively on this matter as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senior Minister. Honorable members, my name is Delano Scantlebury, and I'm the Project Director in the Project Monitoring and Coordination Team in the Ministry of Energy, Business Development and Consumer Affairs. In relation to monitoring and in terms of the policies of government, the Project Monitoring and Coordination Team is made up of 2 persons, myself and a Senior Technical Officer. And we have been challenged. However, we have resources in this budget that would see us bearing on 2 technical officers and some other persons to assist us in regard to the whole monitoring and coordinating of the Barbados National Energy Policy. But additionally, we have been working on the battery energy storage system as well as the Lambert's Wind project. And those have taken over the majority of the resource that we have. But to say now that we have about 16%, I would say, execution in regard to the goal of the Barbados National Energy Policy at this point in time. And we are making serious inroads, and we would expect that with the battery energy storage system, which will be looking at 60 megawatts, along with the energy storage tariff, which covers 50 megawatts, and the Lambert's Wind project, which should be around between 30 and 50, that we would be moving in the right direction in regard to fulfilling on that mandate. I think I'll stop at that point.
And only to say before you go further, Senior Minister, that again, you would have heard, it is a fairly self-evident. We are undertaking a mammoth task of transformation, but the bodies, the human capital has also to be there. But that is not a situation peculiar only to this ministry. We are all doing more with less, and that is the challenge.
Thanks, Chair. Senior Minister, I wish you all the best. I suspect that after this conversation, you'll be in a better position to argue for some support for Mr. Delano to be able to deliver on this most important mandate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Christchurch East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As they say, patience is a virtue. Minister, I want to thank you for what you've done so far. And what I'm going to raise with you is something that people have raised with me, and people have asked me questions, and then in trying to answer those questions, I realize where the issue really lies. If you were to go to Google, and this is the last resort, it disappeared, concessional or grant funding for development in Barbados. I was just Googling widely. It lists a number of things: enterprise growth fund, the trust funds, student revolving loan fund, a set of things. But most people in Barbados have no idea of what applies to who and how to access it. So everybody now knows about the trust funds, because I think perhaps the biggest assistance program we've ever articulated or pushed has probably been the trust funds. So most Bajans know that the trust funds exist. Somebody raised earlier that they may not know exactly how to access it, but most people know it exists and they know the reason for it. But for the person who does not need $10,000 or $15,000, but for the person who is looking for $50,000, $75,000, $100,000, and they have a plan, then they don't know where to go. Now, a lot of the grants that we have and the facilities we have contemplate them being used by somebody. So it's not that we have them and we hope people don't find them and nobody don't come and ask for them and then we try ways to disqualify them. It should be the other way. We should publicize them as much as possible, so as many people as possible know about the facilities, make the criteria and their application very, very clear that everybody knows this. You can go and pick the fund that best serves what it is that you're trying to do and know what you have to bring in order to get a successful application. So there should be somewhere where all of this is in one place. Funding by government. And it lists it down and it has the branches and you can follow it through and whatnot. So I'm just wondering if there is any plan to do anything like that. And then the flip side as well is not just a plan to do it, but to publicize it so everybody can actually know.
And the answer to both questions is yes. I think that that is also one of the areas where, as I said before, we are hiding the light under the bushel. It is not only my ministry, but with great respect, it is also the Ministry of Finance. And I was looking to see whether my colleague, Minister Strong, our colleague, was in the room. The fact of the matter is that there are many windows. In fact, there is a wide and exhaustive menu of options available to business people in Barbados, irrespective of the sector that they are in. And we are talking about small business, micro business, medium-sized business in Barbados. There are equally a whole raft of options available to those businesses which are specifically located in the tourism sector, even though there are also small, micro, and medium businesses. So you can literally pick the fruit that you wish to eat from an orchard. Similarly, if you go into the agricultural sector, there is funding there as well. So that, yeah, the Agricultural Development Fund. What we do not lack for is a menu of funding opportunities. I think you're 100% right. What is necessary is for some of this to be rationalized, and ideally in a digital world.
The actual menu.
Yeah, ideally in a digital world, we should be able to place these potential services in one place so that you can go and see and understand how you navigate, where you go to get what you want. And quite frankly, it might be helpful to do that so as to avoid duplication as well. And that is another thing that perhaps needs to be carefully thought through. But I do agree with you that this is an area that does require some attention in the interest of making life easier for people who are seeking out what is available.
So in pursuit of that, the other issue that persons face is nobody's lending you money unless you're showing some commitment through either an incorporated company or some registered business or something. And I want to commend, I was about to say Kaipo, I want to commend the corporate registry for the work it has done recently. But I still do believe that the incorporation of businesses and forming businesses in Barbados takes too long. There's no, sometimes when you go trying to incorporate a business, if your name is kind of close to an existing name, so let's say Double R's DJing services, but I want R's car rentals, where one has absolutely nothing to do with the next one, right? We keep getting stopped for what I call, or we add complications where I think we need to look and see exactly what is, why the rules exist, so what the rules governing passing off, and those sort of things that make the application of rules make sense. So I want to know what is being done to streamline the processes for registering businesses and companies and making them a lot more user-friendly and a lot faster. Sometimes the opportunity is lost because you can't get that company incorporated today or tomorrow.
Minister, AG, much like you, I understand it from the side of the practitioner of law who has to try to get something done for a client very quickly. Ms. Tamisha Rochester is the officer in charge of Business Barbados right now, and was before that, as you know, Registrar of Corporate Affairs. So I'm going to allow her to field your question. But I do think it is a reality that we have to be mindful of. I myself, as I said, have experienced it. And frankly speaking, I know that a lot of work had been done in terms of trying to improve the state of affairs. I would be interested myself in hearing from not only from the from the officer in charge, but equally from the sector as to the extent to which they identify significant improvement now as opposed to what it used to be. But you and I both know that significant effort has been put into this. But I will yield the floor to Ms. Rochester so that she can share her thoughts.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Tamisha Rochester. I am the Registrar and Officer in charge of Business Barbados. Sorry. Yeah, so to answer your question, Business Barbados is in the process of transforming the way we have done business and have done business for decades, and to move away from a system that was not built for business in the 21st century. So last year we indicated that a new system was coming. And not only is a new system coming, but what we've done over the past year has been to lay the groundwork digitally for the improvements that are to come, but also to review all of the processes, the workflows, the process engineering. And we have a legislative blueprint and a legislative drafter on board who is reviewing the legislation. So it is all of these things combined together that need to work together to be able to allow us to improve the system. So as we know, digital transformation is complex, and we are still working with a system, a legacy system on legacy data that involves multiple integrations, while also as we are transforming, making sure that we are up and running to transform with that legacy system. So a lot of the work that we have done over the past year has not been visible to the public, and understandably so. We have been building the backbone, building the foundation, getting the new improvements, the systems, changing the workflows, etc., for precisely the point that you made. The end result, faster incorporations, stronger systems, more secure systems, and the ability for business persons to be able to move quickly without impediment. So as I said, it's not just a siloed approach we're taking. We're looking at all of the different factors that lead to timelines. And importantly, I should mention as well, we're using the data to guide us. Before we were in a situation where we were basically operating on anecdotal information. We are actually capturing data. So we're capturing the transaction times, the number of transactions, the number of steps in transactions, feedback from the customers where pain points still exist, and we're using this data to drive the transformation that we've already started and we're continuing to do.
Before you go further, AG, let me just amplify that a little bit, because what Mr. Rochester is referring to is a dashboard against which we index and track the satisfaction. PS Hunt, I think, might be able to lend us some further assistance with regard to the functioning of, what is it, the portal that is there now?
Thank you, Chair. As Senior Minister, in relation to your first question, Attorney General, in terms of having one place to capture the information, we are actually working on an overall portal. Earlier, I spoke to the Barbados, the Business Enterprise Exchange, sorry, but we're also working on one portal where persons can log on and see everything business related. So you can find information on fund access, information on trust loans, information on Business Barbados, access to Business Barbados, so that persons can have a one-stop shop and be aware of what is available to help them in their business needs.
So thank you for that. And just for the record, Ms. Rochester, although that question fell to you, I feel it incumbent upon me to say that my dealings with you over the last, since you've been in the position, have been nothing short of fruitful, helpful, and efficient. But I feel that you're, in a sense, constrained by a system that you fell into, as opposed to one that you built around yourself. So just, P.S., I appreciate what you're saying, and just to further develop that as to why it is critical, we think in terms of businesses. For example, you think about business, you think about building, right? But the businesses, a lot of these small businesses in Barbados don't have a building. So we need to start thinking of the small man and not just putting him in a category of small business, right? But he might be small now with the potential to expand if he's facilitated properly. So we need to make our facilities and our systems entirely user-friendly, so as not to discourage persons at the very first hurdle of registering the actual business, because a lot of people get turned off at that spot. And invariably, as we do business with government, everything that government is asking you to do now, they want you to have the TAMIS number or to give a business name or whatnot. So we are requiring it of the people, but yet we're making it difficult, or we have not made it easy for them to put themselves in a position where they're compliant to receive even small business from government. The last thing, and that was the intro to this point, you raised the point of fund access. I'm noticing that there's nothing in the estimates for this year. I'm looking at page 229 of the estimates. There's nothing in the estimates this year for fund access. And as fund access is one of the ones that people will know. They know trust loans, they know fund access. They might not know the rest. When you look and you see there's nothing there, it tends to give you pause. So is there an explanation for that? And yeah, I'll cut off at that point. Is there an explanation for that?
Well, PS pulls up what he has to pull up. Let me just say to you that there will be a move-in of $5 million for fund access. And I think that the documentation that PS wants to refer to is you found it?
Well, you're definitely on top of your ministry, Minister. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Chair, thank you.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Chair. My questions will actually follow some of the comments already made by the AG. Critical to our plan as a government is economic enfranchisement and inclusivity. To be able to create a Barbados in which every person who wishes to succeed and be a part of the economic gains and prosperity has the support and a way in which to engage that platform. We know that for many, many years, that platform would be dysfunctional, dominated by a handful, and systems set up that don't properly support leveling it out and removing the obstacles. And I appreciated hearing some of what you were sharing already, the steps that you're taking to give better support to entrepreneurs, etc. One of the areas, if we're going to do that, there are a number of things that, in my mind, need to be done to complete the ecosystem in a way that it is truly helpful and liberating to all Barbadians. And the issue of the opportunities in the economy would be critical. We are doing estimates, we are doing a budget, and in there will be chock full of opportunities for people to engage the economic space. But many people may not be able to spot the opportunity in something that we share. And we have not, as far as I am aware, looked at taking the time to pull out in each budget the things that are there and to have a methodology for spreading it. So what I want to know is if in the forward plans for the ministry, if this type of work can be done, and how do you, if you do have a plan, how do you propose to make this happen? Because without that knowledge, people cannot engage the space. And then people then cluster in the same areas and create saturation in the areas that they know, whereas if they had better knowledge, they could spread and be engaged in niches that really have some opportunity. So I just want to know if there are plans to be able to do that and how you think you would like to approach it.
Minister, I want to begin by saying that I share your view on a liberating ecosystem which will facilitate meaningful engagement. But I am not sure I understand the thrust of the question. So if you wish to, if you wouldn't mind, just to rephrase the question a little bit, because as I consulted both PS and DPS, and we cannot agree on a common understanding of your question. So, if you rephrase it, it might help us a little bit.
Asking if there are plans to take the budget, the spending that will be taking place there, and identifying the business opportunities that more people can engage. A lot of people have difficulty in deciphering.
Oh, you mean to publicly identify the business opportunities?
Yes, so that people can see where they could enter.
I'm with you, okay. And yes, the answer to that would be yes. I do not know that it would be effective if we just try to pull them all out as one bundle and throw it out into the atmosphere. But certainly there are a number, as you know, there are a number of departments within this ministry. And so, for example, just to randomly go through one or two, I think it would be correct to say that there's $6 million in the vote for the National Financial Literacy Platform program. And we have already had discussion as to how we will have targeted interventions in expanding the National Financial Literacy effort. I had indicated earlier that in part thanks to you and to others who have been in the Ministry of Education, we now have all of the public primary and public secondary schools on board, and they would have, within the last month, been at least 3,000 sessions that had been done, or over 3,000 sessions that had been done with children on financial literacy in our schools during the course of the last 6 months, We must move that program now and use that $6 million to get us into communities. And you understand the importance of that. When you were in the ministry, this was one of the things that you would have been urging upon us. And the fact of the matter is that it is not just schools, it is and the communities, it is equally in the businesses. And so therefore, I can say to you that already we have a number of business places where we are doing the National Financial Literacy training. That, of course, enables the average employee to be able, while at work or in the context of the working space, to be doing something which is personally developmental and economically helpful to themselves. So we're, again, meeting people where they are. There are several departments where the rollout will be done in a similar vein. And so therefore, the answer to your question again is yes. From department to department, we would be using that amplified vote, and there are many areas where now in this $8 million we are having more to spend than we ever did before, and we are planning to deliver in a very direct way to the sector that the department has control over.
I'm glad to hear the response, Senior Minister, because I believe collaboration between units and between ministries is going to be critical going forward. In the Ministry of Training and Tertiary Education, we would be incorporating entrepreneurship and financial literacy training within the programs which we will offer going forward. And what we want to do is to be able to give people the option of acquiring skills that they can either use in entrepreneurship or use to be able to get a job. One of the challenges, however, that small businesses experience in trying to get work, whether it is from government or from in the private sector, is that sometimes they may not have the expertise, sometimes they may not have the insurance to cover if they make an error. I'll never forget one entrepreneur saying to me, it is not that the quality of bigger companies is necessarily better. It is that if they make a mistake, they have the money to deal with it, whereas the small business person may have to run and hide. So that's why I appreciated what you said about standards and being able to support and help people to meet them. So my question is, in order for people to be able to take advantage of business opportunities, there may be the need to work in cooperatives to do it. And I know that a question came about cooperatives already, but I want to know if the cooperatives department is working towards looking at helping them to source opportunities and to work in groups to get it. And if we can consider putting project managers. A case in point is like when you have construction, for example, because sometimes when there are mistakes in construction, it is a headache, not only for the homeowner, but whoever has done the project and so on, and the whole thing comes into disrepute. So people try to avoid small persons doing certain things. So my question is, can we look at having project managers that will supervise, say, a small group of people who have a contract to help them work through it until they build sufficient experience? Otherwise, they'll never be able to break into the opportunities that become available in the economy. Because right now, the economy is growing, and if it is growing, there are opportunities, and we need these supports to help them to be able to get in and be a part of it without creating unnecessary damage to their reputation or to the client that they're serving or for the person that they are doing the project on behalf of.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, may I say to you, I'm going to invite two people to speak to this. The CEO of the Trust Fund Limited, Mr. Jerry Amos, would have, I am sure, been trying to signal to me when I was addressing the issue of your previous question. But equally, Mr. Brent Gittins, who is Registrar of the Cooperatives, should also be given the opportunity to speak to the latter. I just want to say briefly that I agree with you. I think maybe you have actually understated a chronic case of a problem in Barbados. The word stigma is the ideal word to use in my judgment. And we stigmatize small and micro businesses due to, on the basis of operational issues, due to inherent prejudices in this society. For example, in addition to the very clear and cogent point you make, you can add the stigma, which is an ongoing stigma in the construction sector, where we say that small business people should self-mobilize, because self-mobilization is a tool that is used by the larger entities in construction to convince clients, including the government of Barbados, that, look, you don't have to put yourself out to find resources to start a project. We can self-mobilize and get it up and off the ground faster. And so therefore, it gives you longer lead time to do your budgeting and be ready to start to pay. Fact of the matter is, however, that if you approach it that way, you stigmatize the small business person who does not have the capacity to self-mobilize because he has been functioning on very slender profit margins. He has no financial buffer to fall back on and to protect himself financially, far less to take out his own money in order to go or to mobilize resources against his limited assets in order to start a project without being funded to mobilize. And so therefore, the small business person is excluded from the opportunity. And that is an inherent prejudice that does not work in the interest of business development across the board in Barbados. So I want to be very candid. My view is that those are some of the things that these are ills that we have to confront, face on, and find a way to overcome. I will yield the floor, first of all, to Mr. Jerry Amos on the previous question, and then to Mr. Brent Gittins on Registrar of Co-ops.
Thank you, Senior Minister, and thank you for your question, Member for St. James South. I believe many ministers spoke. We were speaking about opportunities. So earlier I spoke about the second pillar in our 7-point plan. So I want to speak on the first pillar. Is a program we are introducing called TOP, Targeted Opportunities Pipeline. So when I heard you spoke about opportunities, I thought that this was the ideal time to speak on this. Now, the predecessor to this program were two, our MyFest program and our StayFest program. What our MyFest program did was we actually help entrepreneurs to build their products up to standards. And I'm glad the minister spoke about BNSA because they played a crucial role in actually ensuring that the standards were met by these entrepreneurs, not only locally, because they sit on the shelf locally, but also regionally and extra-regionally. So to speak on our MyFest program, I want to first say that, I spoke to the minister earlier on this, that I was so proud this week when a store owner in Bridgetown said that she's not taking any products for anyone unless they go through the Barbados Trust Fund Limited MyFest program because of the standards that they come out to the program with. So let me speak about TOP. The TFL will expand the Targeted Opportunity Pipeline, a training and developmental program focused on governance, financial discipline, and around business management. Entrepreneurs will receive core training in export readiness, investment readiness, franchising, for packaging opportunity, and market identification. Following this foundation, entrepreneurs may move into specialized programs such as MyFest for manufacturers and StayFest for service-based entrepreneurs, creating clear pathways from ideas to scalable businesses. I want to go and speak of another pillar. Investing in the next generation. BTFL will encourage early-stage entrepreneurs among young Barbadians by supporting families who wish to assist their children in launching businesses. Parents may partner with the institution to underwrite or guarantee small starter loans that allow young entrepreneurs to test viable business ideas. And let me explain that a bit. We're here to speak about the fact that there are richer persons in the island than others. So when I don't want to say the word, but when a more fortunate family has a child that wants to go into a business, the parent might say, well, here for this little $10,000, you can start your business. We have persons in the community that are not able to do that. So we're saying to parents, come with your child, they have a good idea in school already. We will allow you to underwrite the loan for that child, and we will actually give the loan so the child can actually live the dreams. We see this all the time from in other sports, where young people are good at cricket at a certain age. They don't have the exposure, and when they reach 21, they can't make the West Indies team. We want to get these young people very early, bring them into business, and then we train them right up the line so that they become successful in what they want to do. So we want the parents to come forward with the children, and we're going to allow them to underwrite the loan for the kids. So all the opportunities you're talking about, we're trying to capture. We even want to go into the prison because we've seen over the last couple of years how we had persons that were incarcerated. They came out and they're doing wonderful things. So we even want to go into the prisons as well to carry this training to the prisons. So we are looking for opportunities, member. We are looking for opportunities for entrepreneurs, and trust me, we are going to achieve our goals.
And Registrar of Cooperatives, Mr. Gittins.
Good afternoon, everyone. Brent Gittins, Registrar of Cooperatives. Through you, Chair, I will seek to answer the question from the Honourable Minister. So I would say that the process of having project managers working with cooperatives has already started. We would have recently formed a cooperative in construction. And that cooperative has a project management team that will seek to oversee the viability of projects that the cooperative takes on. The team also will include a quantity surveyor. So the whole notion of project managers working with cooperatives, I would say, is already in motion. Our department as well is quite willing to put groups of people in contact with project managers that we would have, that we can source. So I would say that we try to ensure that cooperatives that are involved in certain projects would not go into these projects blindly, that they seek to have a project management team either within the cooperative or they can have them as consultants to ensure that the projects that they're entering into are viable and worth the risk of taking on. So I hope that answers your question.
It certainly does, and I'm very, you wanted to?
No, I was only going to say, Honourable Member, that is standard now across the ministry. And so, for example, in the vending zones, there will be project managers who will be guiding that process.
Excellent, and let me thank you very, very much for that, because that is going to make a great deal of difference to people being able to participate in the opportunities in the economy. The only thing you need now is to make sure that government pays early and on time so that we don't kill the cash flow of small entrepreneurs.
We're going to speak to that too, Honourable Member, by virtue of a program called Factoring. And if you have another question or you want to come back, I will elaborate on factoring. I don't want to incur the chairman's wrath. But I think that we need to accept that it is a reality that many of our small businesses struggle. And frankly speaking, not because only government pays late, but it is a lived reality that large private companies that get contracts subcontract to small players and pay them late too. In my professional capacity, I've had to carry some to court when 6 months pass and they didn't get paid yet. And so therefore I know of what I speak. And the issue of factoring is a policy intervention that will allow for an entity that might otherwise have to live off of an overdraft facility at 10 or 12% every month to be able to get the invoice paid off, but only pay 2%. There were those who needed financial literacy training in the last election that spoke against it, but I know that it is something that will change the course of life in Barbados. No, I did not. I meant people that are found in a certain street in St. Michael.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and kudos for putting these things in place for the small business sector.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. John.
Thank you, Chair. Senior Minister, I have one question. I have several, well, over 100 buildings across the island, community centers and pavilions. I'm just asking, what is the possibility to initiate a project between my ministry and yours that will allow some of the small facilities to have lights as a result of the PV systems on the top of these buildings?
I think that the possibility would be great, and I would warmly welcome a discussion on it with you and your senior team. Off the top of my head, I will invite the Deputy Permanent Secretary, who very, very competent on these issues of projects to tell me whether there's a foreseeable challenge. Obviously, you're not putting it to me, we haven't drilled down. But it makes good sense to me because just like the vending zones, I do feel that if we can have lights that are available at less cost, then it facilitates the activity into the evening. And in your case, sir, it enables us to have sporting and community development, which is what the country needs, an outlet, especially for our young people, our young males, to compete fiercely and competitively on the field of play and away from the firearms. And in my own judgment, in terms of business, it does allow for the more activities of that nature we can have in a community, the more the serious entrepreneurs will be found. The people who, as soon as there is a large grouping coming together for whatever event it might be or training, they also find an opportunity to sell some natural juices. They also find an opportunity to be involved commercially in some way. And I think that, therefore, there can be a happy marriage of the two endeavors. DPS, you.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Senior Minister. Good afternoon, Chair and colleagues and members of Parliament. My name is Keisha Reid. I'm the Deputy Permanent Secretary Projects in the Ministry of Energy, Business Development and Consumer Affairs. Thanks for the question, Member of Parliament. We do have a number of projects within the ministry, and I'll speak to one particular project where I think we can have synergies, which is the Sustainable Energy Investment Program, where under that project, we have resources to do solar PV as well as energy efficiency across government buildings. We would have done a number of energy assessments on a number of buildings. I will have to liaise with the team to see if any of your buildings were part of that list. But I think it is a great initiative, barring the challenges with the capacity to the grid. We can have discussions with our ministry, my ministry and yours, in terms of how we can scope out a project that we could execute over the next few years. We have 3 more years for the Sustainable Energy Program, and that is funded by the IDB and the EU, and I can have discussions with the project manager who is here and her team with respect to how we can do that. If we don't have scope to be able to execute it under that project, we can also scope out and plan a new project, if so be it, to facilitate this. But I think it is very important. I myself sometimes on afternoons utilize some of the facilities for my afternoon walks, and we have to make sure we finish our exercise before the sun goes down. So it brings great opportunity for not just the persons in the community playing sports, but for the average persons who want to exercise, especially when we get to a certain age, to be able to use the facilities for longer periods.
And just for your benefit, Honourable Member, Minister, that reference to 3 years doesn't mean we will wait 3 years for the project to start.
No.
It means that we have 3 years left in that fund. Yeah, okay. So for you and I, we're talking 3 weeks, 3 months.
Who do I send correspondence to? I will have my PS expedite the process next week. Who do I send?
Go to DPS Reid, who's sitting to my right, and as you and I share common interests in your constituency, sir, you can just lift the receiver and speak with me.
Are you?
Honourable Member for St. Philip South.
Thank you, Chair. I do have, Senior Minister, congratulations to you and your team for an excellent job done so far. I've been following the presentations and I'm indeed pleased to note the responses. However, I do have a burning issue as it relates to telecommunication cables that have become a source of growing national concern for Barbadians. The untidy proliferation of overhead wires across many communities has created an unsightly landscape that distracts from the natural beauty of our country. In addition to the aesthetic impact, these cables pose potential safety hazards where they hang low across roadways and pedestrian ways, creating risks for both vehicular and on foot traffic. In a country that prides itself on order, infrastructure, resilience, and a high standard of public spaces, this situation has increasingly become a vexing issue that warrants urgent attention. Therefore, I will be happy to know what measures are currently being proposed or implemented to regulate the installation, management, and maintenance of telecommunication cables across Barbados, and whether your ministry intends to establish and enforce a comprehensive regulatory framework to address this matter.
I want to thank you for that question, to which I will refer the FTC CEO, Fair Trade Commission CEO, Mr. Rees, and give him the opportunity to speak, because really and truly, the FTC, as I indicated, falls within the ministry, but we are not, the ministry itself cannot do that which you asked about, which is to say, to make that type of intervention. I, however, as minister, can say to you that I agree with you 100%. It is an eyesore. I congratulate you on your diplomacy. Having just left that particular field of endeavor, I can tell you that you commend yourself for that practice, the practice of diplomacy. It is not just a question of optics, as you put it. It is a vulgar eyesore. And all around Barbados, we see these wires hanging, and it has been so now for many years. It is also a question of safety, you're quite right, because I have seen the very large trucks. In fact, in the district where I live, and where the Honourable member who used to be Minister of the Environment lives, we have had instances of his ministries, as they then were, large garbage trucks, pulling down some of these same wires. And it also speaks to a third issue, which I think is the professionalism or lack thereof of the service providers. Because if we can drive around and see it, I am sure that the very highly paid executives in charge of these service providing companies are also seeing it. And it is an alarming thing to me that this could be going on for so long and there be no intervention. But I ask that the FTC speak to the matter.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, through you. Unfortunately and regrettably, the specific matter that's raised, the infrastructural positioning of lines, etc., is not something that falls under the mandate of the Fair Trading Commission. However, I think that this again speaks to what I had brought up previously in my response to the question raised about the future of the FTC. We have been, within the last 3 years, engaged with the telecoms unit on other matters related to quality of service. And the quality of service standards speak specifically to the ability of the consumer to utilize their electronic communication devices. Under our mandate, we have responsibility for economic regulation and also for those standards, those quality of service standards. But however, I think that the future of the FTC could very well include greater involvement with stakeholders such as the telecommunications unit, a greater collaboration in that engagement, so as to ensure that those types of standards are also discussed as a whole of government approach to issues. It is an unfortunate thing, not only in terms of the aesthetics, but as you alluded to as well, the safety consideration. In a previous life, I was heavily involved in the electrical, in managing electrical infrastructure, let's say. And because of that, I feel very strongly about the fact that consideration has to be given to the safety aspect, not only for those who may unfortunately uproot the poles because they've pulled on the lines, but also the public at large who operate within the vicinity. So it is a critical issue. I unfortunately cannot give you a response that offers much assistance, but I would say that we will engage with the telecommunications unit. We will collaborate with the telecommunications unit to try to see what solutions can be arranged as urgently as possible.
I want to thank you, Mr. Reese, because your answer has illuminated, obviously, a little bit of a lacuna, a loophole, which we now have to plug. And clearly in fact, it has provoked conversation between the Deputy Permanent Secretary, myself, and the PS himself as to what next steps should be. Because I want to assure you, Honourable Minister, that your question is pertinent and the concern is real as far as I'm concerned. And the Ministry of Energy will follow up to try to see where resolution should properly lie and to do the necessary engagements. Because this problem is not just in a parish or in a district, it is seen island-wide. And it is not just bad, it has been getting worse for a long period of time. And I'm sure that everybody in Barbados could agree with that.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up question, Senior Minister, I agree with you that there is a lacuna. And in addressing it, I would also want for you to take into consideration the service deliverables of the service providers as well. For example, it took all of 4 weeks for one service provider to address a fallen line in a community in my constituency. And then if you were to be traversing Barbados, somewhere between South District and St. George down to Bussa, if you're using your mobile phone, you have no service, it just drops out. On the highway as well, you dare not have an online meeting traveling in your vehicle on certain parts of Barbados, because you can very well be cut off from that meeting due to the poor service delivery. And I would like to think that in a space like this in the 21st century, that service providers are held accountable for service deliverables that people are paying for. And I would like, in addressing the lacuna, that this is something that you can take on board as well.
I believe, Honourable Member, that it might be worth hearing from Mr. Reese, because I do think that we have now entered, if not trespassed upon, his jurisdiction.
Thank you again, Senior Minister. I believe I would have mentioned previously, we had actually received a directive from Cabinet to look at this specific issue many years ago. And unfortunately, COVID intervened, a number of other issues intervened. And I will be very honest and say that, unfortunately, it has not been executed upon. The FTC, however, within that intervening period, had created the quality of service standards that would speak specifically to those matters. What we need to do now, as I mentioned previously, is ensure that the collaboration between all of the various ministries, all of the entities that have the responsibility for, one, the legislative review and amendment, as well as the implementation of the quality of service standards, and then ultimately the engagement with the service providers so they better understand what we expect, not only as regulators, but as consumers as well. Then hopefully, in a very short space of time, we will be able to see it. But unfortunately, at this point in time, the regulatory limitation is that the legislation does not allow us to manage that particular aspect. But we are seeking to have it changed in as urgent a manner as possible. Legislative reform, not only within the telecom sector, but within the, well, as far as Utility Regulatory Act is concerned, and all aspects of the legislation that bears upon the Fair Trading Commission is to be looked at within this financial year to try to see how we can stay abreast of the needs of the consumers, stay ahead of the issues before they present themselves in a proactive way, and ensure that, as I mentioned before, that we're providing the services that are expected of us, not only to consumers, but also to businesses as well. So that legislative change is really the crux or the focal point of the change that you're asking for.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rees. I want to say to you that my senior team will reach out to you or your team with a view to us pooling our resources to advance this particular issue and to wrestle it to the ground. And my PS is reminding me that even as we do so, we have to look at the capacity building which is necessary within the FTC as well. So that is useful work that will come out of the questions asked by the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, and I'm grateful to you, Minister.
And Chair, my final follow-up question. And Senior Minister, I really do appreciate the feedback, especially the assurance that you've given to address the matter and building capacity within the FTC. So I guess it's upon that that I also ask that you consider the increase in rates that consumers sign an agreement for, but would face increased charges without consultation to them. For example, you may take out a package that gives you a certain amount of Wi-Fi, entertainment, etc. You may lose some of your channels, but the prices don't go down. And in fact, you see a reflected increase in prices from the service providers without consultation. And consumers are being asked to pay those prices or they're being disconnected. And this is something that us as a government need to address post haste.
And again, Minister, I, in the absence of having been briefed, I know the problem. In fact, I have myself experienced the problem. But I would want to hear what the FTC's response to you would be on this issue.
Thank you, Senior Minister. I would wish first, if you don't mind, Senior Minister, through you, Chair, to go back to the previous comments we made on the capacity building as far as the quality of service standards are concerned. I would not wish it to be, I would not wish it to appear as though that is really the crux of the issue. The issue really is that we need to have legislative changes to the telecommunications legislation. And that, unfortunately, does not fall under the auspices of the FTC. That is something that is managed in another partner ministry. So I think that more collaboration, which we have already started, which we are constantly encouraging, I think will help that situation. So I just want to make sure that we are very precise about what the real change needs to be to achieve the goal that you've mentioned. With regard to the matter of provision of services, changing services, services being changed unilaterally without notice, this is something, as you've said, we have observed occurring frequently within the market. And we are approaching it not from a utility regulatory perspective, because, again, I reiterate, that is not part of the utility regulatory mandate that we have. However, we have been approaching it under our consumer protection mandate, insofar as our responsibility to ensure that the consumers get what they have contracted to get. The Consumer Protection Act is very clear about the fact that unilateral changes such as those should not occur. And we have been engaging with the various service providers to ensure that that does not occur. We have been engaging with our consumers to understand how they have been affected in terms of payment for services not received. And we have sought through the Mobile Telecommunications Code that I would have mentioned in my previous comments to ensure that at any point in time when refunds can be obtained, that we very frontally and very aggressively seek to obtain those for consumers. So we are very aware of the issue that consumers have raised, and we are on top of it trying to ensure consumers are not affected and that the service providers, most importantly and primarily, do not cause those issues to be to come to your attention.
Okay, I want to thank you, Mr. Reese. And again, perhaps it is best for us to have conversations not here, but behind closed doors. I think it makes for a more tidy way of treating to some of these issues. In the minds of the consumer, and I am one, the issue of loss of service during calls, the issue of dead zones, where in my constituency, I know that it is pointless in my trying to make a cell phone call in certain parts of the constituency because it's just not going to be the quality that it would be elsewhere in Barbados. And I've heard this or experienced it in other parts of the island. But these are things that I don't think we should be interrogating you on here. I think there are issues that perhaps we may more tightly and usefully be able to deal with in a more structured way. But we will have those conversations. I thank you for the candid nature of your response. And I hope, Honourable Minister, that though I am sure you're not fully satisfied, that you may be willing to agree that you have opened not a Pandora's box, but an avenue for resolution of a problem. Thank you.
Senior Minister, I wish to thank you sincerely. And I am sure that you do appreciate that I'm satisfied that you will do your best to make sure that this matter is addressed. And I leave it up to you and Brother Reese. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
Wait a second.
The question is that I do not report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. He thinks the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 5 minutes past 4.
The question is that this Honourable Chairman will be suspended until 5 minutes past 4. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chairman stands suspended until 5 minutes past 4.